Orders of the day.
M8.
Minister of the Environment.
Order M8.
Order M8, third reading of Bill 8, an act respecting an underground infrastructure notification system for Ontario. Mr. Bailey.
Good day. The member from Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, I move third reading of Bill 8.
Mr. Bailey has moved the third reading of Bill 8.
Thank you, Mr.
Sarnia-Lambton.
Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today with my colleagues and with all members of the House to debate this important issue. I'd like to draw attention before we start to the West Visitors Gallery. Seated there, you will find many proud supporters of Bill 8, the Ontario Underground Infrastructure Notification System. I'd like to pay special attention, recognition to Jim Douglas, President of the Ontario Regional Common Ground Alliance, and Sue McGovern from the Ontario Sewer Water Main Association, and many other representatives of industry who are here with us today, and more that are coming later this morning. I'd like to also represent, there's people here representing Hydro One, Toronto Hydro, Enbridge, Union Gas, Landscape Ontario, Ontario One Call, PBS contractors, Mr. Speaker, the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association, the Toronto Sewer and Water Main Contractors Association, Condrain, and Infrastructure Health and Safety Association, and many others, Mr. Speaker. This isn't actually introductions. I know that sounds like introductions, but we're past that, I know. This group and many others have shown tremendous leadership by championing the issue of safety for Ontario residents, and I'd like to thank all of them at this time and everyone else in this House for their support. I'd also like to pay tribute to my colleague, Paul Miller from the NDP, who co-sponsored, who co-sponsored this bill with me. This is my second go-around at this, and Paul was kind enough to agree to co-sponsor this with me, and I'd like to thank him and his party for their cooperation. And of course, my members across, and Jim, Minister of the Environment, of course, and the House Leader, and many others have put this deal together, and of course, our House Leader, member from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, Mr. Yakubuski, the Whip, the Miracle Whip, who also was able to help put this together with our House Leader as well. It took many people to put this deal together, and I'd like to my party too, who gave me a lot of support, all my colleagues obviously as well. And I was thinking last night. Now this isn't in my prepared notes, but anyway, I'm going to waver a little bit like others do here from time to time. I was thinking that not the member from Pembroke, Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, at all ever. But I was thinking last night that my earlier career, and I don't like to think how many years ago, but I know no one will believe this out there, but going on 50 years ago, when I was a young fella working with my father, he had a small contracting business, and so I actually ran heavy equipment. And it was child labor. Yeah, it would be illegal today. I know Miss DeNovo, she would be after my dad today for this would have been child labor today, we had said, but I didn't feel exploited. It was a great opportunity for me at that time to learn about industry and learn about hard work, and we worked with many municipal leaders and people in the sewer and water main business, and so it was kind of a natural fit. I got thinking about this last night, and I should have had it in my remarks, but I didn't. That opportunity there gave me an exposure to industry, Mr. Speaker, and to the hazards on the job site. Safety is a lot more prevalent today in industry and in the municipal field and in industry than it ever was back in my day, back in those days when I was just a young fella. But anyway, and a good thing that is. But that gave me some understanding. And then later on in life, I went into Nova Chemicals. Worked in a number of places, but Nova Chemicals, I spent over 30 years there. And near the end of my career, I was responsible for health and safety issues and contractors. And the culmination, the start of this bill, it started one night at a sewer and water main reception, actually, and Sue McGovern and others some of them are here today. We got talking about the vagaries of industry and all the rules and regulations, and we got talking about it, and I said, well, I understood something about that because I had actually did excavation permits and was responsible for them to my boss at Nova Chemicals, and I said how lots of times when he said, is everything ready to go, I said, yes, I thought so, and I never really felt confident that we had everything located, and we in Sarnia-Lambton have been the leaders in one call and the call before you dig long before the rest of Ontario. But so I understood what they were talking about, and I think that was one of the first times they had anybody that they felt kind of had their back, understood the issues, understood the vagaries of industry and the cautions and the hazards that people could go through. So anyway, it was a kind of a natural partnership, I say, with my earlier career, then with Nova, and then obviously coming here. Maybe that's why I was supposed to come here.
That's right.
I think for this bill, for the health and safety, among many. I see my colleague from Peterborough there. I'm sure he'd say many reasons. The member from Renfrew said he needed a singing partner. But anyway, to get back to the serious part here, Mr. Speaker, development across this province and in our communities has made the business of excavating in Ontario very risky. Sitting idly by and doing nothing to increase safety is no longer an acceptable option for this government. The well-being and livelihood of the residents of Ontario cannot be taken for granted. It's time for us and this government to act. I, along with MPP Miller from Hamilton Stony Creek and many stakeholders here today, believe it is a long overdue for our province to have a mandatory one-call system, Mr. Speaker. That is why the member from Hamilton East, Stony Creek, and I have introduced Bill 8, the Ontario Underground Infrastructure Notification Act 2012, otherwise known as One Call. Bill 8 will create a single call system for all underground locates in Ontario used by homeowners and excavators alike. So, Mr. Speaker, instead of having to call more than a dozen numbers to receive all of your locates, homeowners and excavators would make one free call. Our presence here today marks a very important milestone for our province. Up until this point in time, Ontario homeowners and excavators alike have been reliant on a patchwork system to locate underground infrastructure, much of which is outdated. To be frank, Mr. Speaker, Ontarians are left with a system which is compromising the safety and well-being of homeowners and excavators alike. But today, Mr. Speaker, members of this legislature will have the opportunity to fix that once and for all. Hear, hear. Today, each and every member has the opportunity to vote in favour of Bill 8, in favour of increasing safety in Ontario, in favour of modernising the locate industry, and in favour of an industry-led initiative, industry-led, as I say, in favour of cutting through unnecessary and restrictive red tape, and, Mr. Speaker, in favour of a simple, free, single point of contact for utility locate information in Ontario. Mr. Speaker, a single call system is something that could have and should have been legislated here many years ago. Long ago. Years ago. And that probably precedes this government. Instead, for decades, Ontario has put up with an outdated, complicated, and cumbersome locate system. Before you landscape or fence your lot, excavate for a patio area or pool area or many other excavations, add a porch, you as a homeowner or an excavator are expected to call for the locates of underground infrastructure on your property before you dig. In other words, you're expected to call for the locations of those pipes, water mains, wires, etc. that could be under your property. Then those utilities, if everything goes right, is supposed to arrive at your property and mark this infrastructure. The problem, Mr. Speaker, is in many communities across Ontario, you may have to call more than a dozen phone numbers to ensure that you have covered everything that might be underground at that particular location. So, before you start your project, you need to account for the electrical power lines, cables, gas and oil lines, sewers, etc., telecommunications. So I don't think it will be much of a surprise, Mr. Speaker, or to anyone else in this House or that's watching this morning that's up and around this early, when I tell you that some homeowners and excavators simply aren't bothering to call for locates before they dig, thus causing a great hazard. During the review of Bill 8, the Standing Committee on General Government had the opportunity to hear from dozens of presenters over a number of days. There were representatives from municipalities, utilities, industry, as well as private citizens. Many testified about the growing complexity of Ontario's infrastructure network. One expert, Mr. Speaker, noted that on a residential street that has over 50 homes, his workers would likely have to cross a minimum of over 250 utilities to complete any underground work on that stretch of road. And it is likely that these sorts of numbers will only increase, Mr. Speaker. Our communities are destined to become denser. That is the intention of this government and its Greenbelt policy. As more and more people require utilities and services in our communities, utilities will be layered in. The complexity of that underground network of utilities will only increase. Industry experts in Ontario estimate that there is over $100 billion worth of buried infrastructure in our province at this time, and that probably number is low. And yet there is no one source of complete or detailed information about the location of all those critical assets, Mr. Speaker. The ownership and responsibility of that vast network of underground infrastructure is spread among hundreds and hundreds of owners in Ontario. Just for a moment, consider the real-life case of a group called North Rock Group, a GTA sewer and water main and road contractor. On Steeles Avenue, it's a boundary between York and Toronto and also between York and Durham, so there's 4 municipalities that intersect there. Within these municipalities, you have many cities such as North York, Markham, Toronto, Richmond Hill and Vaughan. These municipalities at one time may have had their own independent utility and hydro companies, Mr. Speaker. When the North Rock Group, as they told us in committee, gets called to do a water main repair on Steeles, before it even begins to remove the asphalt for the repair, they need to notify Bell, Enbridge, Power Stream, Toronto Hydro, Hydro One, then the Toronto Traffic, because they control the lights and traffic signal on Steeles. Then North Rock would have to call the Vaughan Roads Department, because they also control lights and the traffic signal on Steeles. Then North Rock Group, Mr. Speaker, would have to call Rogers to locate their cables. Then they would probably call Atria Communications to see if they have anything in the area. Of course, York Regions need to be called because determine whether it's their water main or Toronto's, and then North Rock maybe would have to call Toronto to make sure that it's not theirs. And there's still more, but I might not go on too long on that. Mr. Speaker, yeah, that's why we need a one-call system. Depending on where the break is, Mr. Speaker, North Rock would also need to call the City of Toronto to locate the sanitary sewers and the storm sewers. Then they would need to call the City of Vaughan to finally locate the sanitary sewers. North Rock reports that these calls, I'm tired already just reading them out. North Rock reports that these calls would usually take 8 hours to complete, and that's on a good day. That's they're lucky. All the utilities, Mr. Speaker, will be able to show up and perform their locates in a timely manner, which they are not mandated to do at this time. If they don't show up right away, Mr. Speaker, it's not surprising that this project and repair could take days or weeks, severely affecting traffic and the ability of people and businesses in this area to function. This current system of patchwork information and independent locating responsibility does not reflect the increased complexity of this modern province of Ontario and its infrastructure, or the need to kickstart development in this sluggish economy. Mr. Speaker of Committee, the members repeatedly heard testimony that contractors are often forced to wait weeks for locates. Logistically, the current system is held together by sort of a thick red tape that does nothing but slow down projects in Ontario, cause cost overruns and delays. Mr. Speaker, this unnecessary red tape causes confusion and frustration. It leads homeowners and contractors alike, and I don't like to say this, but sometimes it takes, they take risks. They take shortcuts without getting all the required locates, thus jeopardizing everyone in and around the vicinity of DIG. This is what I mean when I say that Ontario has an outdated, complicated, and a cumbersome system in place, and we need to resolve that today by voting for one call. Mr. Speaker, the members of the government often like to defend their decisions to people of Ontario by saying they're modernizing things in Ontario. I ask today that those members that want to modernize things in Ontario and bring Ontario up to that standard to vote in favour of Bill 8 and modernize the Ontario locate system. By voting to modernize Ontario's infrastructure and locate system, Mr. Speaker, they will also be voting to increase safety for Ontario's workers, residents and municipalities. Accidental damage to underground infrastructure is not only expensive, but it can be deadly. And we all know of there was a tragedy in Etobicoke back in 2003, and I won't go into all the details, but we as legislators have a chance today. You know, sometimes we debate a lot of different issues in this legislature, some of paramount importance, others some people would rate maybe not as important. But I think that this bill here today is very important for health and safety, for the environment, for business, for the homeowners, for everyone alike. So it's an opportunity. Doing it itself. Yeah, government should be taking the lead, but sometimes we have to coax and lead along. And Bob Bailey. Yeah, Digger Bailey. Anyway, we as legislators have a chance to take action to help prevent the sort of events that have happened in the past.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the passage of Bill 8 ensures that families can sleep more comfortably, knowing that their loved ones are now much safer going to work and that an excavation in their neighbourhood is less likely to put their personal safety or property at risk. For those members wondering and saying to themselves, can this actually work in Ontario? The answer is yes. And we have a great model south of the border. Currently, each and every United States state, Mr. Speaker, has in place a mandatory one-call system. The federal United States government thought it was such a good idea that they mandated one number for the whole United States, all 50 states, and it's 811. When you dial 811 anywhere in the United States, you are automatically connected to your call center in your area that has access to the underground information. As a in Alaska, they happen there, eh? As a result, the member from Peterborough talks about Alaska. Mr. Speaker, as a result of the 811 system, incidents of damage to infrastructure and utilities have decreased, and this is very important, Mr. Speaker, have decreased by over 70% between 2004 and 2008.
Even in Alaska.
So, and that's even in Alaska, Mr. Speaker. So we need this bill in Ontario to do the same thing. The organization and capacity to implement this system is currently available in this province. One Call is already operating as an industry initiative out of a central call centre in the city of Guelph, with more than 130 members representing over 700 infrastructure agencies and utilities, and those over 45 municipalities at last count, and those municipalities represent upwards of 70% of the population of Ontario. So the largest part of Ontario is already covered, whether it's municipalities or population. Unfortunately, industry analysts estimate there's still a good 400 organizations in Ontario with assets in the ground that haven't been logged and located. So we want to do that, and this bill would do that. Not until every organization with underground infrastructure is participating will this province-wide one-call system really work and be able to reduce risk to our workers, our communities, and this infrastructure. And that's the result of good people in this province want when they what good people want in this province when they pass this legislation. Mr. Speaker, I want to take a moment to discuss the good work that was done by the members of this House and committee. Bill 8 was studied by the Standing Committee on General Government by members of all three parties and heard testimony from over 36 different presenters and received many more submissions from hundreds more. I believe that the members approached their work on Bill 8 in a fair and reasoned manner, and I want to take this opportunity to thank those members from Sault Ste. Marie, Willowdale, Kenora Rainy River, Don Valley East, Ajax Pickering, Trinity Spadina, Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock, Prince Edward Hastings, Elgin, Middlesex, London, Mississauga, Brampton South, and Stormont, Dundas, and South Glengarry. Their input and deliberations, Mr. Speaker, over Bill 8 helped to amend and produce what I believe is a very strong bill and one that is ready to be voted into law in Ontario. Before I conclude, I think I rambled too long on the start, but anyway, before I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the extraordinary efforts of my staff in getting Bill 8 to this point. My constituency staff back in my Sarnia office, Michelle Rowe, June Alexander, and Della Horley, have done an outstanding job of working with my local stakeholders, planning events and garnering support for Bill 8 in and around Sarnia-Lambton. The member from St. Catharines said the other day in his remarks, and I think everyone in this House would agree, that people that work in our constituency offices and our work offices here in Queen's Park are what make us better members every day and enable us to do our job. I also want to thank my Queen's Park staff, one that's represented here today, Anthony Rosetto, and David Donovan, who's away on vacation and couldn't be here, and also Margot Duncan from the ministers from Hamilton Stony Creek. I'll let the member from Hamilton Stony Creek explain that. That was just to see if I want to see if he was listening, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, together this group have done much of the heavy lifting to get Bill 8 ready for where it is today, from consulting with industry to working with legislative council to meeting with and organizing stakeholders and setting up media events to drafting speeches and media releases and committee materials. So letting everyone who will listen know that this Bill 8 is a great idea and one that is ready to be passed into law today. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want to thank my co-sponsor, the member from Hamilton East and Stony Creek, who we'll hear from later. Our joint proposal takes aim at the current complicated and cumbersome system where homeowners and excavators are expected to make these dozens of phone calls. A vote in favour of Bill 8 is a vote to increase safety in Ontario, modernize Ontario's locate system, support an industry-led initiative, and cut through unnecessary red tape, and mandate a simple, free, single point of contact for utility locate information in Ontario. I hope that all members of this House will recognize the merits of this simple yet effective one-call solution. And I ask that all members of this House vote in favour of Bill 8 today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. further debate? The member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, Bill 8 streamlines the voluntary system currently in place for excavators who want to know what utilities are buried in their dig site. Even though these excavators may be professionals who do this sort of thing every day, they cannot rely on information that may not be current or accurate. If these professionals could have difficulty navigating the system, individuals who are embarking on their first project would be overwhelmed by it. To address this problem, the industry created a voluntary one-call system endeavouring to get all utility and other companies with buried cables, pipes, utility boxes and such to provide the exact location of all their infrastructure to the one-call project. Many jumped at the opportunity to ensure that their infrastructure would not be unnecessarily damaged during a dig. They were also pleased that anyone preparing the dig, whether it be for a new structure or a new garden, could make one call to find out if they were at risk of breaking an electricity, gas or propane line or even an old septic line. The current Ontario one-call system has about 153 members, including the founding members, Union Gas, Bell Canada and Enbridge Gas. The Ontario Region Common Ground Alliance, a not-for-profit 400-member driven organization dedicated to ensuring public safety, environmental protection, and the integrity of underground infrastructure by promoting damage prevention practices, stated in its press release, supporting Bill 8, public and workers' safety are at serious risk when utility lines such as buried pipelines or hydro lines are struck or damaged, because homeowners, building contractors, and other excavators do not obtain the precise location of these lines before the dig. I agree wholeheartedly with the Alliance's statement that safety cannot be a voluntary exercise. Given that, earlier this year, nearly 40 municipalities had already joined the existing Ontario One Call Limited, most notably my hometown Hamilton, London, Kingston, Oshawa and Kitchener. From the outset, the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association has supported this endeavour. Their president said, "There is an urgent need for a mandatory one-call system that extends across the province to ensure the safety of our workers and the safety of the general public." And Canada's largest natural gas utilities and a longtime advocate of this kind of mandatory legislation, Union Gas, stated in a press release, Ontario should move to pass the Ontario One Call Act, a bill that would improve safety, save money, and increase productivity. Union Gas also stated that in addition to the risk of public emergency and the inconvenience of utility outages, economic analysts conservatively estimated their damages caused by excavators who don't call before the dig would cost utility customers, municipalities and taxpayers about $39 million a year. There are significant additional costs related to dispatching emergency services to incidents, liability related to injury and/or fatalities and interruptions to businesses. At present, there are approximately 700 stakeholders operating underground infrastructure across this province. As this system evolved, the industry began to push for it to become mandatory. A mandatory system would require all those operating underground infrastructure to participate in a province-wide, single, 24/7, not-for-profit call centre to provide the locates for all underground infrastructure in Ontario. Without this system, property damage has totaled nearly $39 million every year. This isn't just a cost for the utility companies, it has a cost for governments and individuals as well. A significant loss of revenue, productivity, and business efficiency. When one adds the cost to businesses, it's easy to see why the costs of construction are so high and often why projects run over the estimated completion time. In 2010 alone, there were over 3,200 natural gas line breaks in Ontario, Speaker. In 08-09, 2 accidental breaks resulted in fatalities, deaths that could have easily been prevented with accurate, up-to-date information on the infrastructure that exists underground. With statistics like this, we have no wonder why with statistics like these, we have to wonder why there has been any resistance to the immediate implementation of a mandatory one-call system. And with urban and rural development in Ontario creating an extensive web of oil and gas pipelines, telephone cable, fibre optic networks, sewer and water pipelines, and electrical and transit signal wires that provide essential goods and services to our communities, we have an increasing need to get this system in place very quickly. The implementation of Bill 8 will also capture federally governed systems such as Trans-Canada Pipeline, which must participate if the Ontario system is mandatory. Additionally, across the province, we have a variety of timelines and methods to prepare for an excavation which an individual or company must know before even thinking of making the changes or improvements they envision. As energy costs go higher and more municipalities are included in the natural gas system, we need to ensure that greater protection is afforded all Ontarians. Not only do we have an increasing natural gas lines, but we have increasingly complex underground infrastructure from many utilities. How many of us really thought about a landscaper potentially causing a break in some underground infrastructure? We forgot how deeply these must sometimes dig to make the changes a homeowner wants or needs. As I've said in the House before, sadly, there are too many examples of accidentally severed propane and natural gas lines. And the delayed effect of a severed gas line leaves one with a mistaken assurance that everything is fine when nothing happens at the time it is severed. I also fully support mandatory carbon monoxide detectors in every dwelling and workplace, but these detectors should not replace the requirement that all underground infrastructure must be easily identified before any work is done. Carbon monoxide detectors can help us escape poisoning, but they can stop an explosion from a severed line also. One of the advantages of this 24/7 system is that it allows homeowners to deal with these issues when they get home from work and not have to take their lunch hours for days on end just to get through to the complex numbers of organizations currently required. As I've said before, Speaker, one of the concerns that I do have about the system is that we bring all insurance companies on board also. We want to know that they fully support the system and will consider one call to Ontario's one-call system as complete due diligence in the case of a claim. One of the concerns that I have raised by a businessman raised from the north is the establishment of a call centre in the north as well as one in southern Ontario. As we can only assume, there will be quite different types of underground infrastructure, likely many more propane lines and the Trans-Canada pipeline in the north, and we'll want to ensure that this new organization is staffed with people who know the north and will have a better understanding that all information as provided is accurate. But while going through the process leading to this morning's debate, I've been saddened by the political game playing that has occurred sometimes. Bill 8 should never have had to wait until this negotiated day of debate to be passed into law. When the safety of Ontarians is clearly going to be enhanced by a bill, where a private member's bill or a government bill, it really should be a no-brainer that is passed into law. Don't get me wrong, I'm overjoyed that Bill 8 will become law today and receive royal assent forthwith. But without the circumstances of a minority government, we may very well have been a completely different situation. During the last session, actually just a year ago, my Bill 92, which would have brought automatic sprinklers, another safety feature, to every retirement home in Ontario, was blocked, unfortunately, by the government. The government leader of the day, she ensured that no government member would attend the subcommittee to move the bill forward to the public agenda. Because of that government's determination to stifle that progress, necessarily a piece of legislation, automatic sprinklers are still not mandatory in every retirement home in Ontario. During the last Parliament, when I was trying to have my bill move forward, we had the deaths of seniors at Muskoka Heights Retirement Home in Aurelia, a facility without automatic sprinklers. And just a month ago, we had a tragic loss of 2 more seniors' lives at Hawkesbury Retirement Home. I can only imagine that these deaths may not have occurred if we had had the mandatory automatic sprinkler legislated when I first brought the bill to this chamber. But it fell victim to political game playing, and we are here a year behind the desired full 5-year implementation timeline. It's extremely sad commentary on how the last Parliament worked. But the forward steps that we have taken with Bill 8 leave me hopeful that my current Bill 54, by latest attempt to bring automatic sprinkler system to every retirement home in Ontario, will be fully embraced by all sides of this chamber and become a law before the end of this year. I want to express my deep appreciation to the many people who have put endless hours of time, energy and commitment to bringing Bill 8 to this point of third reading and royal assent. The Ontario Regional Common Ground Alliance representatives of Union Gas, Bell Canada and Enbridge, who are leading the initiative from the very beginning and who have sent their staff to Queen's Park on many occasions to further this bill, have done yeoman's service to this province. Not only have they done research, lobbied through their industry and here at Queen's Park, but they have worked with the current one-call organization to bring it on board with a move from a for-profit to a non-profit situation, never wavering even one iota in their commitment to this necessary legislation. We all should take our hats off to these organizations and their staff for their tireless might I say, relentless dedication to getting this bill in place this morning. I want to thank the members of my caucus for their support, first of my co-sponsoring of this bill, then ensuring that it would be here for debate today. Thank you to my caucus. It is the first bill with my name on it that will have passed third reading and royal assent. It is a privilege and an honor.
It could be the start of big things to come.
It could be. I've been very, very frustrated over the last 5 years, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, Speaker, I hope.
I think a partner with me.
And I might have 2 wives, according to Mr. Bailey. That's another story.
We'll have to work that out.
Yeah, work that out, Bob, please. To be fair, I also want to thank the government members across the floor. Their support of Bill 8 is much appreciated, not only by me, but certainly by every person who has their project made easier and safer because of the passage of Bill 8. Finally, I want to thank MPP Bob Bailey, the member for Sarnia-Lambton. Bill 8 was Bob's legislative initiative, and he invited me to co-sponsor it with him. I appreciate Bob's confidence in me, and that he invited me to be part of something that brings greater safety to the workers and people of Ontario. I also would like to thank my staff, and especially Margot Duncan, not Margot Miller, for doing all the hard work she did working with Bob's office and his staff, and of course with the Alliance. This is a very exciting day here at Queen's Park. It also shows that, Speaker, that you know, with push and shove and some maneuvering, things can get done in a minority government. And you know, the government you know, saw the light on this, and I'm certainly much appreciated that they put partisan politics aside and did what's right for the people of Ontario. We need more of that around here, Speaker. I agree. And I think you know, when I first came to Parliament, Speaker, I was you know gung-ho and thought I could to make, and I was I thought we could do a lot, and of course I never realized that partisan politics went on so heavily, and it certainly frustrated me. But thanks to Bob and a lot of other people, and working together and putting these lines of walls aside, that we can do things that are good, and it certainly gives me hope that we will do more of this in the next coming months and years that will be good for people. And I think people out there in the public certainly want to see this Parliament work. They want to see members do the right thing, and certainly there's nothing wrong with robust debate and exchanges between different ideas. That certainly is healthy. It's a democratic process. But in the end, I think common sense should prevail. And that's not Mike Harris' thing, by the way.
No, certainly not.
Common sense should prevail, and I also believe that it will. And I think today's a starting point. Thank you to you all. Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Alliance.
Thank you very much. Further debate. The member for Mississauga, Brampton South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I would like to thank all the stakeholders who are present today in the Queen's Park. Welcome to Queen's Park. Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to speak on Bill 8, brought forward by the member for Sarnia-Lambton and Hamilton East Stony Creek. I applaud the members for their dedication for bringing this legislation forward. It's very clear that this is an issue they deeply care about. This bill would, if passed, establish a single point of contact for all underground utility location services in Ontario. An existing corporation, Ontario One Call, which currently operates in Guelph, Ontario, would be established under this bill. And if passed, it would be the only non-profit call center to handle all underground locates in Ontario. This new non-profit corporation would be mandated to operate a call system to receive excavator requests for the location of underground infrastructure across the province. And it would identify for excavators whether underground infrastructure is located in the vicinity of a dig site. It would be mandatory for all owners of underground infrastructure to join the Ontario One Call Corporation, including entities such as Hydro One, Ontario Power Generation, and every municipality across the province. Even small municipalities with minimal underground infrastructure would be forced to become members. Mr. Speaker, I was a member of the committee that studied Bill 8, so we heard many views and strong concerns. Mandating Ontario One Call as the single one call service provider creates a monopoly that underground infrastructure owners would have no choice in joining. Unfortunately, it would have significant negative impacts on other one-call service providers that already exist in the province of Ontario. It would effectively put organizations like Digline and Dig North out of business. Every year, people in Ontario are injured, vital services are disrupted, and important public infrastructure is damaged when buried utilities are hit while digging. And the expense of a utility hit is borne by the contractor, locating company, utility providers, insurance companies, affected public and business owners. Our #1 priority at the Ministry of Consumer Services is public and consumer safety. Risks to public safety are unacceptable. For this reason, the Ministry is absolutely supportive of reducing hits to vital underground infrastructure, increasing worker and public safety while reducing service disruptions and damage to vital infrastructure. That is why in 2009, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Consumer Services pursued a voluntary approach to drive a substantial increase in participation in a one-call-to-dig system across all utilities. We believe that a voluntary approach is more efficient and effective than a bureaucratic, red tape, monopoly approach mandated by government. Regulations already exist which require excavators to obtain locates prior to digging. Let me repeat, it is already the law to call before you dig. The existing locate regulations are enforced by the Technical Standards and Safety Association, the Electrical Safety Authority, and the Ministry of Labour, respectively. We continue to encourage all utility owners, including municipalities, to join this voluntary program, and it is working. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we understand that about 80% of Ontario's population is covered today by a one-call-to-dig system for gas utilities, the single most dangerous underground utility. About 70% of Ontario's population is covered by electrical distribution companies who are members. About 50% of municipalities are already members, and it is our understanding that there has been recent momentum for a number of other municipalities to join a one-call system of their own choosing. We believe that a voluntary system is the way to go because the users and beneficiaries of a one-call-to-dig system are the best qualified to establish the operating criteria. The 3 existing organizations in Ontario that respond to excavator locate requests, namely Ontario One Call, Dig North, and Digline, have made strides to ensure worker and public safety through their effective routing systems. And because the cost of one call, utility locating members, and marking service is paid for by utility members. Our current voluntary one-call-to-dig system protects the value of taxpayer investments in underground infrastructure. Together, we have a common goal in maximizing the reliability of our underground infrastructure, and protecting the safety of workers who service that infrastructure, as well as the public who depend on it. We also want to accomplish this as efficiently and inexpensively as possible, saving time and tax dollars. Voluntary participation ensures that the one-call system delivers services at rates that members feel are appropriate. A mandatory system could cost hard-pressed taxpayers their hard-earned dollars and hurt Ontario families in their wallets and purses at a time when our government is trying to help Ontario families cope with rising costs. But that is only one reason we cannot support Bill 8 in its current form. We can only endorse an approach that has the support of all impacted stakeholders. Currently, this mandatory approach, as in Bill 8, doesn't have the support of all stakeholders. Municipalities, through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, have told us that they cannot and will not support mandatory participation in this one-call to dig system. NOMA, the Northern Ontario Municipality Association, also oppose Bill 8. We all have an obligation to listen closely to these representatives of our municipalities across the entire province. EMO and NOMA have determined their position because many small municipalities with minimal underground infrastructure would be forced to be members in a program they don't need. They are not alone. Other stakeholders do not support Bill 8, including, for example, the Electricity Distributors Association, Shaw Communications, and Dig North. A new regime of regulatory obligations would be forced on organizations and municipalities. This could result in impacts on costs and staffing, and hiring costs could be passed on to consumers. And I have said could because there is no way of knowing the impact at this time. But I believe that any resulting service problems and conflicts would affect Ontario families and the public. We also know that the bill doesn't require accurate locates and it defines excavator quite broadly. What point is there in providing locates that are not accurate? We know that inaccurate locates are a contributing factor of strikes to infrastructure. And if the Bill 8 includes a homeowner digging with a shovel, is this a burden we want to place on Ontario homeowners and consumers every time they wish to dig in their flower beds or backyard? Bill 8 would make it an offense for homeowners to do so, and they would be subject to offense provisions if they fail to call Ontario One Call for merely having a green thumb. Mr. Speaker, Bill 8 has many flaws that cannot be fixed through amendments. During the public hearings and submissions, we heard some stakeholders raise concerns about Bill 8, and those are worth examining and addressing. We heard that the bill proposes a one-size-fits-all approach that may have unintended consequences. Additionally, the proposed bill doesn't include provisions for appointing enforcement personnel to conduct inspections or investigations. And we cannot support the unintended consequences that we can see. We want an approach that has the support of all impacted stakeholders. And we want an approach that sets standards and make improvements to the current status quo. And we want an approach that ensures that data and measurement outcomes are available so that we know that we are making improvements that help protect the people of Ontario. But I believe that any resulting service problems and conflicts would affect Ontario families and the public. Mr. Speaker, improving safety for the well-being of Ontarians is paramount and will remain this government's #1 priority. We continue to support a one-call to dig system in the province of Ontario, and I commend the work of industry, especially the Ontario Regional Ground Alliance, in strengthening Ontario's one-call system to eliminate the underground hits to infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, as I have said earlier, and I would like to reiterate that I applaud the members from opposite for bringing this legislation forward. Mr. Speaker, their intentions were good, and their concern was to ensure greater safety. But as I have said earlier, that I was also a member of the committee, there were stakeholders who opposed Bill 8, and their concerns needs a careful scrutiny. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that we want an approach that works for all, the current voluntary approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further debate? Is there any further debate?
Is there time for a debate?
Further debate. Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I normally say I'm pleased, but that's an understatement to be able to speak to a bill like this, Bob Bailey's. This is a practice that is, I believe it's in place in virtually all, if not all, of the American states. They're way ahead of us on this. As Mr. Bailey said, this is an issue, fundamental issue of safety and common sense. If we have the opportunity to make one call, as opposed to, as he was talking about earlier, maybe a dozen or more, why would we not exercise that opportunity? This is a great moment, as far as I'm concerned, in the legislature here, where we're going to pass a bill that will make it more efficient, more effective, and safer for all the people of Ontario in all our communities. And I'm out of time. Congratulations, Bob Bailey.
Thank you very much. Further debate? Mr. Bailey has moved third reading of Bill 8, an act respecting an underground infrastructure notification system for Ontario. Is it the pleasure of the House that the motion carry? Carried. Carried.
Third reading of the bill, quasi-lecture, pleasure of the law.
Be it resolved that the bill do now pass and be entitled as in the motion. Orders of the day. I recognize the Minister.